Hi everyone, Chicken here. In the last chapter, we covered some of the basics and fundamentals of art. In this chapter, we will be learning how to sketch a human. I'll be going into anatomy and proportions of the face and body. In this first lesson, we'll be focusing on proportions and breaking down the body into simple shapes to help us get anatomically correct looking characters. There are many ways to do this, so let's just jump into Procreate here. Some people like to use cubes for the torso and hips, but personally I prefer using cylinders and circles. I'll just demonstrate it here. I'll just be using the soft render brush for the sketching. Okay, so I'm just gonna start with the head with a simple circle and the T guideline so that we know what way she's facing. Next, the neck connects to the head at the base of the skull, and we're just gonna slope it down to the shoulders and connect it to the middle where our collarbone or clavicle is. Next, I'll draw this egg-shaped thing, which is similar in size to the head but slightly bigger, and similarly I have the T guidelines on. And I'm just gonna draw the costal margin is, or the bottom outline of the ribs. Next, I'm just gonna extend it down to create the abdomen. I like to break the abdomen into two parts, like two oval cylinders stacked on top of each other. All the while, we're gonna be noting down their volume and midline. And now to attach the legs, so the articulation of the legs start above the crotch. So we will draw a sort of a underwear shape starting about midway of the second cylinder, around here. And I'm just gonna bring it down like this. For the thighs, they can be drawn in the form of a cylinder. And we're gonna draw the guidelines to show the volume. Circles for the knees, and I'm just gonna make this smaller. For the calves, we're gonna draw more cylinders, but they're gonna be sort of in a triangle shape, like this. Big on top and smaller down below. And finally, her feet. Okay, I think we can move on to the shoulders. I'm just gonna draw two circles for them and bring it down to form the upper arms in the form of cylinders. As always, we note down the volume with the curves. And now we draw more cylinders for the lower arms. For the elbows, instead of drawing circles like the knees, I just like to round out the top part of the lower arm and overlap that with the upper arm. So I'll just draw the hands here. And the hands are gonna reach to about the middle of the thigh here. If we want to adjust the length, we can always just use our liquify tool. Maybe make this longer here. Yep. And for the breast, we can draw teardrop shape like this, because the breasts have some weight to them, so they're gonna be pulled down. Either that, or we can draw some sort of angular box like this. I find this way a bit more stylized, not so realistic, but both can look good. Just gonna pull this in a bit because it's a bit slanted. Now we can check the proportions a bit. So from the head to toe, the crotch will sit somewhere in the middle, like around here. And for the knees, they will be sitting somewhere around the midpoint of the leg, starting from here. Yep, so once we have our lines down and we see if there's anything wrong, we can always just use the liquify tool and make it a bit more proportional. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Now, let's try drawing a male figure. For the most part, the shapes will be the same, but the proportions may be slightly exaggerated. For example, the neck is a little thicker and our shoulders will be wider. Also, the rib cage and chest is wider and broader, so we're gonna draw a larger circle or oval. And for the abdomen, they're gonna be thicker than the females and less curved inwards, so you can draw them more straight. And the legs will be quite similar. If you want, you can draw it more muscular by exaggerating the curves, but you can do that with the female body as well. Similar circles for the knee and the lower calves with the same shape. And for the shoulders, I like to exaggerate them to make them bigger, and the arms thicker. So proportion wise, it's very similar to the female body. The middle from the head to toe is where the crotch will sit. And similarly for the legs, the knees will sit in the midpoint. They're not quite lined up, so I'm just gonna liquefy them a bit here to fix the proportion. Yeah. Now let's try drawing a different pose from a different angle. When we are in a natural position, the neck is usually not straight down. Most of the time, it's gonna be kind of leaning forward. And for the rib cage, because we're looking at it kind of from the side, our costal margin is gonna be like this. We use the midline to guide us where the highest point is. And I shaded in that part to show that it's on a different plane. The abdomen is very similar to the upright pose. And same for the crotch area. We always want to take note where our midline is, so it can guide us to where certain points are. And our legs are gonna emerge from kind of the underwear line here. Our other leg. And when you're in doubt about anything, just find reference and copy it. And for her chest, I'm just gonna go with the angular box, so we can generally see where the breasts are facing. And like previously, if there's anything too long or too short, you can always get the liquify tool to fix things. So that's how I break down the human body. If you want to stylize anything or exaggerate the proportions, you totally can. Just make sure that the same basic shapes are there and your ratios stay correct. If you need help with poses and you can't find any references, I know Clip Studio Paint has a built-in 3D model for humans. But if you don't have Clip Studio Paint, I really recommend this app called Magic Poser. The models look really pretty and they are natural and realistic. Also, they are pretty easy to pose and manipulate. Setting up a scene is pretty simple. We can add as many models as we want from the plus button at the bottom right. And we can pose them individually at the joints. Just pull them and they'll move. And we can even rotate each joint using the rotate button at the bottom. And create really cool poses. We can even add some props if there's anything we are struggling with in our drawing, like a wall for example, and we want to know where it's placed. We can add that and change its dimensions using the scale button to fit what we need. For the mission, draw the basic shapes of the body while looking at photo reference if needed, keeping in mind the proportions. Start with a basic front view, but if you want to practice other more challenging poses, please go ahead. You can find a lot of interesting poses from figure skaters and dancers. To expand on the mission, there are 2 levels of practice. If you are still a beginner, you can start off by tracing the basic shapes over the reference. But if you have some experience already, you can just draw while looking at the reference. However, I don't recommend drawing without a reference, as we need input of new information to learn. In this lesson, we went through the basic shapes and proportions of the human body. In the next lesson, we will learn some basic anatomical landmarks in order to create a line art over our base shapes.